There's a place inside the multiverse where color dies, where the air hangs still as if the world itself has forgotten how to breathe, where desolation reigns and even your own shadow doesn't belong to you. And the most dangerous part? You can walk into it and never realize you've left your world behind. Alright everyone, settle in. Open your books, though they'll probably be of limited use today, because what we're discussing isn't a place easily captured on the page, though we'll certainly do our best. Today, we're stepping into the Shadowfell. Now, before anyone asks, it's not related to the Nine Hells, nor is it comparable to the Abyss, and it's not simply the land of the dead despite what some might claim. The Shadowfell is more subtle than that, at the same time more all-encompassing, and in many ways, far more sinister. To put it simply, the Shadowfell is a reflection of our world, a dark mirror laid over the material plane and the polar opposite of the Feywild. Every mountain, every forest, every city you know, they all exist there as well, but they're different, drained of color and hollowed out in many ways. Imagine walking through your hometown, recognizing every street, every door, every path you've ever taken, and yet the color is gone. There's no sun, moon, or stars in the sky, and that sky never rises beyond a dim, ashen twilight. This means, of course, there's no day or night, so the passage of time feels off. The air feels heavy, like something pressing gently but persistently against your chest, urging you to slow down, to stop, slowly but surely depressing you, and squeezing out any joy you once felt. That is the essence of the Shadowfell. Within the greater structure of the planes, it exists as a counterpart, where the Feywild reflects the world in its most vibrant, chaotic, overflowing state of life. The Shadowfell is the inverse. If the Feywild is life turned up too loud, the Shadowfell is life slowly being turned off. According to the earliest versions of our cosmology, the plane of shadow at one point was considered merely a demi-plane, which are basically planes that are unfinished in some way. It's somewhat convoluted, but at a certain point the plane of shadow achieved a critical mass, and came to be known as the Shadowfell, and it would be the largest of the demi-planes floating in the ethereal, and was made up of both positive and negative energy in equal measure. So in this origin story, the Shadowfell spontaneously formed over time due to the accumulation of energy. But then you have other recountings, one of which the goddess Shar, after having Mystra murdered by Cyric, plunged the cosmos into chaos. This allowed her to manipulate negative energy and inject it into the plane of shadow. This combination was so powerful that the souls of the dead were drawn to this altered plane, forcing them to pass through it on their way to their final judgment, and Shar would call her new creation the Shadowfell. And then you have the most recent theory that the Shadowfell is simply an echo of the material plane, nothing more, nothing less. This would explain the shared geography and why it's more easily reached than the outer planes. The thinking is that these parallel planes, the Feywild and the Shadowfell, were created by the Primordials, who would split the Prime into 3 parts, because they found some parts too bright and others too dark. But whatever the truth is, we may never know, though I suspect the truth is, as with most things, somewhere in between. You might assume reaching this place requires powerful magic, a ritual, a gate, a carefully prepared spell. And yeah, those paths do exist. You have spells like Plane Shift, Gate, and even the spell Shadow Well for the unwilling, where the spell causes the shadow of the targeted creature to become a gateway to the plane of shadow, pulling the victim in. But these are not the most common methods. Many, if not most who enter, do so through a stationary portal, because there are places in our world where the boundary between planes wears thin. We call them shadow crossings. You'll find them in abandoned ruins, in graveyards turned over too many times, and on battlefields where the dead were never properly laid to rest. Step into the wrong stretch of fog, follow the wrong trail through a dying forest, and without warning, the world changes. The sound is the first thing to go. The birds no longer chirping, the wind no longer whistling through the trees, just stillness. And when you turn to leave, the path behind you is no longer where it should be. These crossings exist for varying periods of time. Some may last a day, others may last for years, until one day the sunlight touches them and they burn away, never to return. It's said that the majority of these phenomena are one way, though it's not uncommon to hear of shadow creatures being expelled from these portals. After all, more than one community has been wiped out when a crossing has suddenly appeared in their local crypt. So now that you've stumbled into the plane of shadow, this is where the true danger reveals itself, because the Shadowfell doesn't rely on any type of immediate danger. It's far more patient than that. The longer you remain, the more the plane settles into you. At first, it's subtle. Things like fatigue, a lack of urgency. You pause more often, rest for longer than necessary, convince yourself that whatever brought you can wait. And then it deepens. Hope begins to feel distant. The things that once drove you, duty, ambition, even fear, they begin to dull. The lack of color seeps into the minds of any who visit, so apathy eventually sets in, and actions begin to feel meaningless. The Shadowfell won't kill you quickly. In fact, it doesn't necessarily try to kill you at all. It convinces you that nothing matters, that there's no reason to struggle, no reason to leave. Many succumb to this slow wasting process, and those that fall completely become shadowy versions of themselves. They then wander the plane until they even lose the will to maintain their physical form, at which point they merge with the shadows and become one with them. Some are able to resist the despair for some time, but the longer you stay, the harder it becomes. Many who enter the Shadowfell do not die, they simply stop trying, and in a place like that, that's more than enough. Despite all of this, the Shadowfell is not empty, far from it. There are those who dwell there, some who chose it, others who were made for it, and a few because they got lost and no longer remember any other way. Among the most well-known are the Shadar-kai, a term that refers to any one of three seemingly similar people native to the Shadowfell. Some are a cursed species of fae. Some are the descendants of ancient Netherese that fled Toril during their catastrophic fall. Then you have a third type, elves if the oldest accounts hold true, changed by a prolonged existence within the plane. They serve the Raven Queen, though service is an imperfect word. It's believed that their origin stems from a failed attempt by their queen to ascend into the heavens. Supposedly, at the time, they were part of an elven kingdom in the Feywild, who agreed to participate in a ritual that would allow their queen to enter Arvandor. However, due to interference, the ritual was corrupted into a curse, which would siphon the queen and her followers into the Shadowfell, forever keeping their souls bound to their increasingly mad and grief-stricken queen. The Shadar-kai cling to sensation, things like pain, risk, intensity. These are the things that they value. Anything that reminds them they're still capable of feeling. Because in a world that dulls everything, feeling becomes something you have to fight for. They aren't mindless or inherently cruel, but they are shaped by the Shadowfell, and that alone should give you pause. Then there are the dead. Not like the loud, violent sense you might expect, but in the quiet, lingering way death settles into a place. Shadows move where they shouldn't. Presences linger long after the lives that created them have faded. And then you have the Sorrow-sworn. Not quite living creatures in the strictest sense. They're emotions given form, loneliness, anger, despair, each stripped down to its rawest shape and made to walk. They each draw sustenance from their individual emotions, from the angry Sorrow-sworn with aggression and violence, to the hungry who try to consume everything around them, from flesh, energy, even the screams of their victims. To encounter one is not simply to face a monster. You're facing a feeling with nothing left to temper it. And at the center of it all, there's the one who watches, the one who rules the Shadowfell, the Raven Queen. Now, there's much we don't know, and much that perhaps we aren't meant to. She's a goddess of death, but not in the way many expect. She doesn't revel in violence, nor does she bargain in souls. Instead, she collects memories, moments, fragments of lives that would otherwise be lost, typically focusing on those of tragedy and despair. And to that end, she dispatches her Shadar-kai across the multiverse to wait for events to unfold, after which they can collect mementos, and sometimes even the souls of the dead, and return them back to their Dark Queen. Her domain, known as Letherna, is a place of stillness, a fortress of black ice within a frozen forest, through which the souls of the deceased have to pass before reaching the afterlife. Well, at least according to certain understandings of our cosmos. But is she benevolent? Cruel? Just? That depends entirely on who you ask, and none of them agree. Much of the Shadowfell is desolate, and the parts that aren't are constantly in motion. Over time, mountains turn into canyons, forests relocate themselves, and swamps seemingly dry up and disappear. If you were there in person, you wouldn't notice it, but if you left and then returned, you'd realize that things were completely different. However, there are places where its nature gathers and takes shape, such as Gloomwrought, the City of Midnight, one of the largest settlements in the Shadowfell. Trade still happens here, deals are struck, travelers pass through, often with business best left unspoken. But I wouldn't drop my guard if I were you. Gloomwrought doesn't survive because it's protected. It survives because it's useful. And in the Shadowfell, usefulness is often the closest thing to security you'll find. And then there's Barovia, the oldest and best known of the domains of dread, a land that doesn't belong entirely to any one world, a valley shrouded in endless mist, cut off from everything beyond its borders. Those who enter rarely do so by choice, and fewer still ever leave. The sky above Barovia never really clears. The sun, when it appears at all, is pale and distant. Villages cling to existence beneath its dim glow, their people quiet, watchful, as though they've learned over time that drawing attention is a dangerous thing, because something or someone is always watching. At the heart of this land stands Castle Ravenloft, and within it, Strahd von Zarovich, a lord tyrant, and some even say, the first vampire, a creature bound as tightly to Barovia as the land is to him. You see, Barovia isn't merely a place within the Shadowfell, it's what's known as a domain of dread, which is a demiplane shaped by the will and the curse of a single being. The mist that surrounds it keeps others out, and also ensures that Strahd never truly escapes. And so the land suffers with him, endlessly repeating its grief, with all the fear and paranoia that comes with it. To step into Barovia is to enter a story that has been trapped in the same dark chapter for far too long. And perhaps the most unsettling of all are the echoes. because the Shadowfell reflects our world. Chances are you'll find places you know, a city you've once visited, a road you've walked, but here they're wrong, missing the vibrance you once knew. Or worse, not entirely empty, a door slightly open, a figure standing where someone once stood, but not moving the way a living thing should. To walk through such a place is to confront the memory of your own world, stripped of warmth and life, left behind like something the universe has already forgotten. So the next time you're out adventuring and things seem to get eerily silent, when the air sits a little too still, use your dark vision, check your shadows, make sure they follow exactly as they should, because if they don't, if they just linger or move a moment too late, then I would advise you to stop walking, because by the time you realize where you are, you may have already stepped into the Shadowfell. Thanks for listening. Alright everyone, that's the end of this one, the Shadowfell. Make sure to comment and like the video. It really does help with the algorithm, you guys know the drill. Anyways, I'll see you for the next one. So be safe, take care, and happy trails.